We are so honored and blessed to be here today to support Speaker Turzai in this amazing legislation, which is a disabilities rights legislation, which is really going to defend and protect individuals with Down syndrome. So it is with honor I would like to introduce you to a friend, a personal friend of mine, Speaker Turzai, who has been leading the charge for disability rights in the state of Pennsylvania for many years. He's a person of the highest integrity, of the highest character, and we here in Pennsylvania are so blessed to have his focus on our most precious Pennsylvania resource, which is human life. So it is an honor right now to introduce you to Speaker Turzai.
Kurt, thank you, buddy. Chloe, how are you today? Hey, I'm so honored to be here with this great man, Senator Scott Martin, Representative Judy Ward, because these two champions were teammates with the rest of our team here, because we want to do something that matters to us from the bottom of our hearts, each and every one of us, I have to tell you. And here's the thing, I'm not going to be able to get all of our guests, but we've got some really special guests in the front row, and if each of you could just, because this team, we're all here for you because we love you all. You got to shout out your name to us, okay? Shout out your name. Tell me your first name, young man. Yep, you're number one. Michael. Who's next? Devin.
Sarah.
Sarah. Sir.
Okay, Ken.
Caden.
Chloe.
Chloe.
Mary.
Mary.
Isabella.
Isabella. High five for Isabella, everybody. Young lady right there. Monica. Oh, wow. And how about Raina? Thank you, Judy. Who else do we have in the back there? Who's there? Julia. Oh my God, we're so honored. Ben. Johnny. Joan. Jenna, I'll get it right. Oh my goodness. High five for this crowd. We love this group. Hey, House Bill 2050, which Judy and I have sponsored, and my great friend Kathy Rapp, who was the inspiration, said, here's what Kathy said. She's the chair of our pro-life caucus, and here's what Kathy said to us. We don't say no to her too much. She's our new chair of the health committee. Here's what Kathy said. If Ohio, Indiana, and North Dakota can have taken steps to protect children with Down syndrome diagnosis by passing laws that prohibit people for having abortions because they found out or might have found out that somebody has Down syndrome, then Mike, Mr. Speaker, she usually says Mike, isn't it time for Pennsylvania to do the same? And you know what? We see this as disability rights legislation, don't we, Kathy? Here's the thing. I'm so honored to be a sponsor of this and to have all these great co-sponsors here with us, because here's what we have to say. Every human life is worth living and has dignity. Every human life. Everybody is entitled to live long, happy, productive lives, and are worth not only living, but worth giving out love and taking love. Moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas, we know how much you love your kids. We know how much you dedicate to your kids. This good man, Russ Diamond, one of my colleagues, told me, 82-year-old aunt is the joy of their life, and she has Down syndrome. And here's the other thing I want to say. Folks, who of us does not have a disability, right? Like, who's perfect? My wife reminds me I'm not. Here's the thing, each and every one of us deserves dignity, and that's what this Down Syndrome Protection Act is all about. I got to tell you, I'm just so honored to be one of the sponsors of this. And I've got to turn it over right now because we're all going to be on message to I heard this guy on a conference call, and he's so good. He's so smart. Senator Scott Martin, and he'll be followed by Representative Judy Ward, and then our chair, Kathy Rapp, and then we have some special guests to talk as well. Senator Martin.
I'll do. What's that?
We're going to
Yeah.
do Karen after the representatives. We'll do Karen right
Okay,
now.
gotcha.
All right.
Okay,
Senator
good.
Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's great to partner with so many of my House and Senate colleagues on trying to get this done. I think how many folks can remember when you saw the reports out of Iceland where they were touting the fact that they were basically eradicating Down syndrome from their society? Do you remember the ridiculousness of that statement? And I think every single person who actually values the dignity of human life realizes they were eliminating people. People who live their lives, who have hopes and dreams, like my friend Caden, who loves the Incredible Hulk, right? Seriously. Who the speaker you're going to hear from later, Karen, who swam the English Channel. I can tell you, I would never be able to swim the English Channel. So many good stories. Mary is a fellow alumnus of mine who will be from Millersville University. Think about the folks. They were trying to eliminate individuals, not Down syndrome. And we all know that that's just not the case. And what further is perplexing is to think that these folks with Down syndrome cannot live fulfilling, independent lives. There's stories of that throughout this entire Commonwealth and throughout this entire country. This kind of practice of selectively removing individuals from society, unfortunately, is not new to society. It was called eugenics. It was practiced in Nazi Germany. And think about this, as science advances, and they're now able to identify predisposition to cancer, when they're able to probably someday be able to say, well, that child's only going to be about 5 foot tall, or that one's going to have male pattern baldness, or is more prone to obesity, is that literally the society that we all want to live in? Because Speaker Turzai hit it right on the head. None of us are perfect. None of us. Folks with Down syndrome deserve protection. And there's already protections in law that you cannot have an abortion based on gender. And we know that's an issue around the world, but we have laws to protect that in this Commonwealth, that people are not going to be able to choose, well, I'm going to have an abortion because I wanted a boy, but it's going to be a girl. And what we're trying to do here now is to prevent what I would call probably one of the largest forms of discrimination you can think of. And that's discriminating against someone that potentially, and remember, these tests aren't always accurate, potentially may have a diagnosis of Down syndrome. Folks, this country has come a long way when it comes to rights with folks with disabilities. Well, it's going to start by Pennsylvania passing a law that right starts with a right to live. So thank you all. I want to thank my colleagues, Senator Ryan Almond and Senator Scott Wagner, who are here today. And let's get this done in Pennsylvania.
Thank you so much. I want to thank all the supporters. You know, before I begin, we do a lot of rallies here in Harrisburg. But I have to say, this is one of the most emotional rallies that I have attended. It's so great. It's so wonderful. But I want to thank all the supporters who have come today. I know it's not easy to take time out of your busy day to come to Harrisburg, but this support demonstrates how important the issue of life to all of us who value human life. I want to thank my friends from Blair County who have driven here to be here today. Beside me, I have my friend Alyssa Clark and her daughter, Raina. Hi, Raina. Every child deserves a chance at life, and I do not think that the diagnosis of Down syndrome should be used as a sole reason for a woman to opt to undergo an abortion. The bill we're discussing here today deals specifically with those children diagnosed with Down syndrome while in utero. While I have great compassion for the sadness and stress that women and couples must endure when they receive any news that their child is not expected to be what society terms as normal, but that should not be used to terminate a human life. Yeah, thank you. See, I brought my own cheerleader. Many individuals with Down syndrome today lead productive lives. They get an education and even hold down a job. They are thriving, loving individuals who should never be deemed as undesirable. One of my family members, Christian Holmberg, was an individual with Down syndrome. He was able to get a job in the mailroom of the United States Senate, and he was loved and admired by all who knew him. One of the things I find most shocking is that studies have shown that mothers are being indirectly or directly pressured and advised to make this decision to get an abortion by genetic counselors and even our society. Other countries, such as Iceland, Denmark, China, and Great Britain, provide screening for this particular syndrome and have seen abortion decisions increase dramatically upon a diagnosis of Down syndrome. However, I like to think the United States is better than that. I think instead of giving a mother reasons to get an abortion, we need to instead provide more information and support when it comes to Down syndrome, as well as funding for more research, given that this is one of the more prevalent diagnoses. Parents need to know that the future has never been brighter for babies born with Down syndrome. I want to thank Speaker Turzai for your shared passion on this issue. I am hopeful that we can get this legislation passed into law and join the other 4 states in the nation that have already taken steps to protect these children by prohibiting abortions solely because of a Down syndrome diagnosis. Thank you all so much for being here this afternoon.
Thank you, Representative Wards, Senator Martin, and thank everybody again for being here today. It is a true honor. You know, when Chloe was born, I started looking for stories of individuals with Down syndrome who were doing amazing things. And one of the first people I came across was Karen Gaffney. And as I read her story, she immediately became one of my heroes. She is an individual who is a role model. She's an international speaker. She is a person who has kept the whole world focused on abilities, not the disability of Down syndrome. And she is a visual of what a life worth living truly means. So it is my honor that Karen flew in last night from Oregon. Her plane was late. This event was that important to her, and it is my honor to introduce Miss Karen Gaffney.
My understanding is Dr. Karen Gaffney, right?
Yes, thank you very much.
Please go right ahead.
So thank you for that great introduction, by the way. World Down Syndrome Day will be celebrated 9 days from today on March 21st. It is a day of celebration. It is a day of reflection. It is a day where people from all walks of life come together to raise their voices as loud as they can, to advocate for our rights and for our inclusion in the life around us. It's okay. I know I am different than you. I look differently. I talk differently. I walk differently. I don't hear as well as most of you do, and I don't see as well either. And sometimes it takes me longer to learn things. Now, another thing that's different about me is that I can swim much longer and much farther than anyone in this room.
Very true.
I may not be faster than you at the start, but I will outlast you on time and distance any day of the week. You should know that I have some pretty big swims on my resume. My first big open water swim was a relay swim across a well-known body of water called the English Channel. After that, my open water swims have all been solo, including a 9-mile nonstop swim from Nevada to California, straight across the width of Lake Tahoe. I also like to tell people that I am the first person with Down syndrome to have escaped from Alcatraz. I have done that swim from Alcatraz Island, where the prison used to be, all the way across the San Francisco Bay 16 times now. And unlike some famous prisoners who have attempted that swim, I have lived to tell about it. I have done many other open water swims in Donner Lake, the Boston Harbor, Dunleary Harbor in Dublin, Ireland, a 5-mile swim from Molokini to Wailea Beach in Maui, and an 8.5-mile swim from Vermont to New York, straight across Lake Champlain twice. I swim 2 miles a day, and I work out on weights too. But I haven't done a big open water swim in a while, so I'd be up for a challenge. But not today, because today we have more important challenges to talk about. You see, if you put your head up and look around, you will see and hear and read about phenomenal accomplishments of those of us living with Down syndrome all around the world. You will learn about people who are graduating from their high schools, some going on to colleges, knocking on the doors of the companies in their communities, or starting their own businesses. Stories are pouring into websites and Facebook pages all around the world, celebrating people with Down syndrome. Every day, not just on World Down Syndrome Day. People who have fought all the odds and are living and growing and contributing in the communities where they live. You will read about some talented actors and musicians, golfers, surfers, hockey players, fashion models and fashion designers, hard-working employees, public speakers, and even some who have escaped from Alcatraz. All showing what is possible with a full and inclusive life in the communities where they live. All showing that Down syndrome is a life worth living. So, I'm sure by now some of you are thinking, well, why is this so incredible? And what's the challenge? I will answer both those questions. You see, 60 years ago in this country, people like me didn't even have a place in the classroom. So families pulled together with all the friends and supporters they could enlist. They started knocking down doors, pulling out all stops, standing up for our rights, and getting legislation passed that allowed people like me into the classrooms of the 80s and 90s. For many of those families, it was too late for their children, but they made it happen for my generation and the generations to come. I know that it is far from perfect. Breakthroughs haven't come for everyone. We still have battles to fight for inclusion in too many classrooms around the world. And employment is still a huge hurdle for us. But you cannot ignore the tremendous progress we have made. It's incredible. Just read the stories. So, what's the challenge? Well, I'll answer that question too. You see, those of us with Down syndrome and our families face a very difficult future. We face the possibility of wiping out all that tremendous progress we have made in the last 60 years. Just as we are making so much progress, a whole industry has grown up, focused on prenatal screening. Screening that would end our lives before we take our first breath. Now that you can test for Down syndrome before birth, there are many experts in the medical community who will say this extra chromosome we carry around is not compatible with life. Not compatible with life? So think about that for just a minute. Think about the people we just talked about. Think about all the people you know with Down syndrome. Your cousin, your brother or your sister, the person you see in the grocery store, maybe the person who is in your class in school. Or think about me standing here. Am I not compatible with life? Well, after everything we have done, I would say we are more than compatible. We are what life is all about. Our lives are worth living, and our lives are worth learning about. Thankfully, we have medical research teams all around the world racing to outrun the prenatal testing industry. They are working at breakneck speed to find ways to improve our lives, not prevent them in the first place. The Jerome June Foundation in Philadelphia is a big part of that effort. It was the wave of humanity that lifted us out of institutions, brought us home, got us into schools, included us in the community of life, ladies and gentlemen. And it will require another wave of humanity to stop the targeting of Down syndrome around the world. It will require people like you to stand up for us and with us to help us show the world that Down syndrome is a life worth living. Down syndrome is a life worth choosing. And Down syndrome is a life worth saving. Thank you very much for your time.
Good job, Karen. Good job, Karen.
Senator Martin. Good job, honey. Beautiful. Another round of applause for Karen as she walks off. Okay, thank you again, Karen. Very inspirational, beyond. It's priceless. Priceless what Karen has done, and she truly is the voice and the visual of a life worth living. Next person I'd like to introduce is Sue Swayze. She's another one who came in here. Sue used to work for Indiana Right to Life when they did a law out there to ban abortion of Down syndrome. I actually connected with Susan several years ago, and she now works for the Susan B. Anthony Foundation in Washington, D.C. She's another champion for disability rights. She's a champion for disability rights at diagnosis, so it's an honor to introduce my friend Susan.
Thank you, thank you. It is an honor to be here, and it is an honor to stand with all these fine people, from your legislators to your families and to people with Down syndrome. I just want you to know I cannot swim 2 laps in the pool. I just can't do it. So I can't talk about that at all today. I really can't do that. So I'm amazed at her story. You know, I'm with the Susan B. Anthony List out of Washington, D.C., one of the nation's largest pro-life organizations. Thank you very much. Thank you. And we also have a research and education arm called the Charlotte Lozier Institute, where we have a lot of medical, genetic ethicists, lots of medical information and research and statistics. And that's why I come to you today, and it's a privilege to be here. You know, our culture prides itself these days on tolerance of diversity, in standing for those who were worthy and valuable, and our brothers and sisters in this journey we call life. It's a life worth living. But there are very few safe havens for our children. No safe place tells them they're no more imperfect than we are, no less beautiful than you and I. At the Charlotte Lozier Institute, we do research and statistics for life, to prove the need for life, the value of life, and the worthiness of life. We see individuals, unfortunately, though, that are mostly medical professionals who talk about the cost benefit in the universe of public health, where individuals are sometimes denied their dignity based on their perceived value to society. We also see an irony in genetic counselors that even deny the fantastic medical progress being made to ensure that children with Down syndrome and other conditions lead increasingly long and fruitful life. They're missing some of this. At the Charlotte Lozier Institute, we promote as often as we can, and I'm sure others might say this later, research done, very groundbreaking research by Brian Scottco, the Down syndrome program at Massachusetts General Hospital. 99% of people with Down syndrome are happy, as you can see. 97% of people with Down syndrome like their identity. This was a large study, a huge study. 99% of parents love their children. 99% of brothers and sisters say they love their siblings. We believe that women must be allowed to consider the facts like that, hear the good news, and not be pressured to abort. And I think this is your challenge. This is your challenge right now with even your colleagues in the House and Senate with House Bill 2050. You want to beat stereotypes and maybe even fear. And so in that, we encourage you. We also want to thank Chloe. And for Chloe's bill here in Pennsylvania, many states have replicated that. Her father, Kurt, I replicated that in 2015 in Indiana, and in 20 states have done that now so far. And now this ban is also a very popular bill moving through the country, but Pennsylvania is on the cutting edge. So we stand with you today to send the message that we'll no longer tolerate this type of discrimination in Pennsylvania. It's information. Oh, thank you. No more. Life is never easy. We'll continue to call for truthful information about the unique gifts that people with Down syndrome bring us, and laws and policies like this critical bill that will protect them so they can have a life worth living. Thank you for having me today. We offer all of the support we can possibly bring you. God bless you.
For all the members of the House who are here with us, including I know Majority Leader Dave Reed was here, and all the members of the House and Senate, if you could please raise your hands. Look at these champions that have taken the time to be with us today. Thank you. Folks, we're teammates, and we have to work together to do this. And our last speaker, and we want to thank the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference and the Family Institute and the Pennsylvania Family Council for their support. They've been just so gracious. But our pro-life chair in the House, Kathy Rapp.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for including me today in today's rally in support of House Bill 2050. It's actually pretty amazing and humbling to be here with the families and the children. Those of you who chose life, I applaud you, but it is humbling. Karen, her story is just truly amazing, and certainly a great story to show that people with disabilities have value, their lives have meaning, they can accomplish great things. Karen has shown she's accomplished greater things than many of us in this room. So I applaud Karen and the other speakers. It's just amazing. I'm going to begin my remarks by sharing an extremely relevant passage from Proverbs 24, verses 11 and 12. Rescue those who are unjustly sentenced to death. Don't stand back and let them die. Don't try to disclaim responsibility by saying you didn't know about it. For God, who knows all hearts, knows yours, and he knows you knew. And he will reward everyone according to his deeds. As chairwoman of the bipartisan House Pro-Life Caucus and the newly appointed chairwoman of the House Health Committee, I applaud the efforts of Speaker Turzai, Representative Ward, Senator Martin, and those who are willing to stand for life, both in the Capitol and all of you who are here who have long supported our legislative efforts for life. I find it brutally tragic to review statistics such as many as 9 out of 10 children diagnosed in utero with Down syndrome are aborted in the United States of America. It is especially troubling that there are so many among us who speak so casually about forcing women to have abortions if they are told they are carrying a child with a disability. Indeed, in Iceland, they brag about eliminating children with Down syndrome. This is another clear example of the philosophy being advanced by Planned Parenthood and their belief in eugenics, the world's largest abortion provider, for which the administration has embarked on an ongoing public relations tour to flaunt his unconditional support. A Planned Parenthood clinic in Philadelphia, there has been more than 20,000 babies aborted since 2013. Ironically, here in the House, on almost any given session day like today, state lawmakers recognize entire groups of people with disabilities, as we legitimately should. In doing so, we must always keep in mind that recent medical and scientific advances are constantly changing what it means to live with Down syndrome and other disabilities for the better. What I'm talking about here is an unprecedented life-saving microfetal surgeries that are becoming common practice at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and across the United States. What should never be denied is the fact that people with Down syndrome and other disabilities have contributed much to our society and will continue to do so when we finally recognize that each of their precious lives are worth living. As the extraordinary life story of our featured speaker, Karen Gaffney, demonstrates, there is simply no justifiable or convenient excuse for aborting an unborn child diagnosed with Down syndrome. Under current law, a woman can obtain an abortion prior to 24 weeks gestational age for any reason, including if the woman's sole reason is to select the sex of the child. With 4 other states already adopting similar laws, House Bill 2050 would expand that exception to prohibit aborting a child solely to a prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome. Contrary to what the administration and Planned Parenthood might tell you, House Bill 2050 contains no restrictions on a mother obtaining an abortion in cases of rape, incest, or personal endangerment. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I applaud you for taking the lead on protecting the sanctity of all human life in Pennsylvania. And I am greatly looking forward to teaming up with all of you to advance this historic pro-life legislation to the governor's desk. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the families and the children. This is your day, and we celebrate the lives of those with Down syndrome today. Thank you so much.
On behalf of Senator Martin, Representative Ward, Representative Rapp, and the rest of our members, thank you so much. Pro-Life, Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation, thank you for all your great work. PCUC, Pennsylvanians Concerned for the Unborn Child, thank you. It's actually well beyond Pennsylvanians, people concerned for unborn child, and all the other pro-life organizations that have been with us in the disability organizations as well. With that, we're going to close. Thank you very much for being with us today.